Good evening and welcome. My name is Olga Chwa, and we're here for Astro Yoga tonight. Moon is visiting Jupiter and Neptune over in Pisces, so we'll be focusing on feet and ankles and shins and calves. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel. Glad to guide you through some movements from the lower parts to the higher parts, and these can be done in any position. They can be done sitting in a chair or on the floor, as I'll be demonstrating, or you might be lying on your back, and that's fine. You're going to be moving the toes and the ankles. They don't need much to be accessed, and you can really be in any orientation, any position that's suitable for the body. And I encourage experimentation. I encourage you to play around to see what's even possible. Is it accessible to do it some other way than the way I've been doing it all these months and weeks? So wherever you are, you're noticing the toes, and we begin with that basic opening and closing of the toes, curling them down, popping them up, forward and back a few times. Separating the big toe from the little crew. And as you're down here, you might think about the dreams that you have. Pisces is a dreamer. It's also a feeler. Our dreams are often fueled with emotion and with feelings, whether they're the night dreams, the visions that we have little control over, or our daydreams, our wishes, our desires. Feeling that connection to the path that you're walking on with the feet, warming up the toes with the forward and backward, with the separating the bigs from the littles, and then moving into the ankles and lower legs. As you move the ankles, notice how far up the leg you can feel that impact. How's that sensation showing up higher in the leg? And then we combine all those movements, toes and ankles, so that you're reaching as if you're picking something up or pulling something off the floor with the toes. And then the opposite, going down in like a high heel shoe position, scooping those toes up. And reversing that, coming up in the high heel, and then going down as if diving with the toes into a foot pull and coming up in the high heel position. So moving those toes in this ankle and toe combination. Once you work that out, let the ankles do some other shapes. The toes just go along for the ride as you circle around with the ankles, around and round, in one direction, in the opposite direction. We got circles, we've got figure eights. Can you draw a figure eight with the ankle? Or maybe an infinity is a little more accessible with the horizontal figure eight. Keep things lying down. Infinities in one direction, and those reverse and have their backward direction. Moving left, moving right. And then arriving into that stillness from the movement, especially the backward movement, right? We've got a retrograde in our practice here. We move forward, we move backward, and there's a stillness. Especially between the directions, but particularly at the end. So giving that stillness as the awareness comes up into the knees and separating out the legs for the knees. Wherever you are, you're bringing one knee in towards the body. If you're sitting, you bring it into your chest as you are. If you're reclining, lying down, you can bring it up even further. So we're moving hip and knee. Knee is bending from straight leg to bent leg. And the hip is going from extended to flexed as well. We've got extending joints and flexing joints. So take a moment, 3 or 4 times with one leg, with the other leg, noticing if that movement is the same on the two sides. It often isn't. We use our bodies asymmetrically, and sometimes many of us have an injury on one side or some changes that happen with the way we carry ourselves. And it could be showing up in this movement. If it feels good, if you're ambitious, if you want to try to do the core strengthening variation of both knees together, that's a way to give your body a little more of a challenge. It's an option. These are all suggestions. Take what feels good and leave the rest. So we've got the knees closed and open, and then we've got other shapes and movements the knees can make. So separating out one leg, lifting one leg, and you might hold on to the thigh in a way where the knee is free to move, and you might even establish what is its movement, what does straight leg feel like, what does bent leg feel like. And then stop halfway at about a right angle, a little halfway bent leg, and then see if you can sweep that side to side. If you could draw a dash, a little minus sign. So on the floor, it might be a little awkward, but on the chair, and if you're sitting up, it's just as we were drawing that line on the floor, right? So the open and closed leg is the up and down, and then it's going to be a little movement in the hip as well as the knee. So finding those 4 points. We want a top point, a bottom point, an inside point, and an outside point, so that we can connect those points in the knee rotation. So finding a way to move the foot throughout those 4 areas. It might be a little smaller, it might be slower. Moving the knee around and around in one direction and then going back. We've got the retrograde to mind. One went forward, goes back, and then it stops, right? We get to that stillness. It's up to you. I'm about to switch sides and come back for the infinities. It's up to you if you get the infinities here or later. But again, the basic setup is to establish low point, high point, inside point and outside point, and then connecting the dots, letting the foot, and that might be small and low. That might be something that's just the size of a teacup on the floor, and that might be something that's a bigger, like a beach ball or an umbrella, depending on what you're accessible, what you're finding pleasant. And sometimes those little movements, sometimes that less of an effort helps some of those joints, some of those ligaments soften. So ambition is a funny thing. And if you catch yourself striving, oh, I'm going to go further, I'm going to go bigger, check yourself. Check if that's really working for you, if that's helpful. Because there might be another way. There might be a gentle approach that is effective, or maybe even surprisingly effective. So rotations in 2 directions. We're still with the knees, playing with infinity symbols, figure 8s. Same invitation. From a chair, you might be drawing a tiny little shape there on the floor, the size of a little headband. And it might be something quite a bit bigger, like an entire jump rope. Sure what these images are arriving in my teaching here. 2 directions on 2 sides. So we've got 3 or 4 repetitions in one direction, and then pausing and switching that direction. And hopefully these movements even don't feel like much. Ideally, they're not strenuous. Ideally, they're not painful. But what they are doing is helping those joints create more synovial fluid, helping the body create a little more space, a little more exchange of blood and lymph and resources in there. So after that activity, finding a moment of rest, of breath. And we'll come into the hips. We'll come into our friends, the hips. A couple different options for the lifting and rotations as you did with the knees. If you're on your back lying down, you have 2 options. The bent leg is one option to keep it a little more gentle, to keep the knee soft. It's a little less effort for the core, but you might have it and you might want to lift a leg straight up for that hip bend. And that it's a little heavier for the body, and that's going to be a more strengthening practice. So there'll be lifts, either one of the variations, and then rotation. So same thing, and maybe the knee is bent, maybe the knee is straightened out, but from up and down there's circles, and then from circles there are infinity symbols with the focus on that hip joint. So finding your your work there, lying down. Sitting up is a little more compressed at the abdomen, but doable if you prefer to be sitting up and finding these movements. Same option, straight leg, bent leg. And hopefully on a chair with enough of access to the knee. Same invitation. If the knee's the laser pointer, it's the hip socket that's moving. And if that greater strength is welcome, if that challenge is invited, a greater lever, a longer lever is going to make it more work. So choosing your intensity there and make it in a way that reflects those needs that you identified. Letting stillness be the friend that it is, letting stillness be a place to return to throughout the session. That moment of pause. As you work with your hips, so the invitation was up and down, round and round, 2 directions, clockwise, counterclockwise, and then loops with infinity symbols or a figure 8, depending on what feels accessible for you. And that has 2 directions, boy. And if you're doing as much as I'm doing, you're feeling the effects. So we're coming back to that rest of integration, of softening, of receiving the benefits of these movements into the legs and the body. If you're on the chair, sitting on a European chair, so to speak, let yourself be near the edge so that we can continue with the whole spine in a sitting cat pose. So when you're ready, there might be more rest. There's no rush in this. We'll be with cat pose for a while. So that's just what's coming down the pike. And if you are on the floor, the invitation is to bring your body up and around and set up on the hands and knees. If you're sitting up on the floor, you check that the elbows are facing, those soft insides are towards each other, and there's a buoyancy, a softness about them. And the cat pose is about the spine. It's about moving the body forward and back through the middle, through the bones that are the neck and the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine down low and all the way to the tailbone. So you're finding these movements, you're finding these articulations, reaching and bending, and then giving your cat some organic, oh, hello cat, some organic positions. Yeah, let's have this cat show us what to do. So my cat's showing me separated arms and legs. That might be an idea for you. Way to variate it. Make it access it a little bit different. Cat assistant, the variation on a chair would be to do the same thing, to get to the edge of it and have one leg back. You want to try that teaching we just got from Pichu? One leg forward, one leg back. And that's actually a way to access the hip sockets, the hip joints, in a way that can be helpful. So whatever you do on one side, you'll repeat it on the opposite side. That asymmetrical leg position, knee position can help get into some of the details there. If you are on the hands and knees, the next invitation will be to reach the leg back, but rather than lift it, you want to actually lower it. So you're bringing the hip down towards the floor, and you might see what my foot's doing back there. Sometimes it's turning in, sometimes it's turning out. Getting into those details around the hip and the knee. Trickier to do sitting down. You might do this visually or just rest, but if you want to find something similar, standing up would be a way to access, again, that asymmetrical leg position. One leg is closer and the other one leans back, and then you can reach toes in, toes out. Again, it's not about lifting that hip, but really about bringing that hip down towards the floor. So we're accessing the stretch into the sacroiliac joint through the IT band and finding what different positions, what different orientations of the foot and placements can offer some of the connective tissues and sinews through the back. So working through A little hip specificity, hip focus. Taking a moment there. If it feels good, you continue, you find what you need. And then we make nice. After you do something that feels a little getting in there, a little exploratory, making it nice. If you're on the hands and knees, you give yourself whatever wiggle cat you want. If you're standing, you might have a hula hoop hip situation after those inner leg stretches, back of the hip stretches. And wherever you are in this process, we are going to come up slowly into a standing shape. So if you're on the floor, you might tuck your toes under and pop the knees up into a downward dog, into a mountain pose. If you like it, you hang out there for a minute. If you don't, you keep moving, or you go back to rest. And if you are practicing with a chair, the variation is to find that right angle, to find the body bent halfway from at the hips, from the legs to the torso. And that might involve actually stepping back to get the stretch a little bit in the backs of the arms, seeing what's available, what's comfortable. Does it feel good to let this chest sink in through the shoulders? Whichever variation, on the chair or on the floor, the chest can move back between the shoulders. And letting the knees be responsive and soft in this practice as you bring this body slowly upward. To the feet, to your earthly shape of your bipedal human here on earth. And since we've been focusing on the feet and the ankles, we will begin with a little bit of a walk right in your space. If you have as much space as I do, that's great. If you have less, you work with less. You might have just a piece of a mat there. So we're going to do just a little walking. And slowing it down and feeling through it. What does this even feel like? What is the body doing? To bear weight on one foot, to let that weight come down as the other heel lifts up. You slow that down into almost a meditation. Weight shifting, rolling, feeling how your spine is responding, the shoulders, the neck. In these slow motions, tiny, tiny steps. You're not trying to get anywhere. You're trying to feel into it. What is happening to arrive there? Little steps, slower and slower, to arrive at the center into standing. And feel through that. Feel through the body arriving into standing. Let the shoulders lift, go to the back of the body and drop down. Here's where we will round out with the hands and the shoulders and the neck. Letting the feet be comfortable, bringing the hands together if that's available, interlacing the fingers and flipping that over as you reach above your head. This might be your practice. That lift and that reach might be plenty for the side and the front of you. Keeping the shoulders away from the head, soft for the neck. And you might take it higher. You might find your position with the arms above the head, and you might lift up, rise up onto the toes. If that feels good to be standing on the feet, that challenge of balance, that challenge of strength requires focus and concentration. Picking a point that does not move for the eyes to focus. Rising and lowering. And let's stay here in this position. We've done a bit of a different sequence many years, but let's bring in a backward and forward bend before the side bend to warm up the body for that. So we just went up, you lengthen, And now you might have your hands on your back. You might have them at your sides, depending on what you know and feel comfortable with your arms for a back lean, a high release, an opening through the chest, the collarbones, lifting the chin a little bit. You're not leaning back. You're not trying to do a back bend. It's a high release. It's like some sort of theatrical stance where you're opening through the heart, lifting that energy upward, and you're reversing that with that forward fold. It might be just hands to the thighs. That might be the practice, hands to the back, hands to the front. You might go deeper. You might go into a forward bend if that's your thing, if you like that. A backward forward combo. Inhaling to the back, exhaling to the front. How does that help warm up? Feel the back of the body as you fold forward, the front of the body as you reach back. And then you arrive back at the middle, at the center, and we'll go on with the side bends next. So stepping wider, if that feels good, finding a position that is wide and available. And if you've had enough of the standing and wish to continue in a seated position, everything we will do following can be done on a chair. Arms low, arms high, standing or seated, the side bends. The side bends are so important. I can't say this enough. Whether your arms are staying close to the body or you've got your arms together and lifted, do your variation that feels good. Maybe the arms behind is your jam there tonight. But as you're moving side to side, notice all the good things that you're doing. You're opening the ribs, so you're making more space for inhale and breath. You're moving the spine in a side flexion, a lateral flexion, and that's strengthening some of these deeper spinal muscles like the erector spinae and the rotatories and the multifidi, side to side there. And you're also massaging your intestines, your colon. You're ascending up the right, descending down the left, is getting that compression and extension to help bring nourishment, nutrients, oxygen, blood into these important organs for your good function. So those side bends, I could stay a whole hour side bending, but you're going to do a standing twist next from your middle position, reaching out, spreading out, great big starfish to wrap it around and look behind. At your speed, at your pace, you might be a quickie, you might be a helicopter body there, and you might be a get in there and hang out for a while type, to enjoy that twist, to find the nooks, the details, the crannies. Because all of this is alive, right? Our bodies have so many moving parts, little shifts in the ankles, in the knees, in the hips, in the shoulders. Where does it feel good? Where can you find even better feeling? What's the body open to? What's the body saying yes to? Giving yourself this standing twist and arriving again at the stillness, at the standpoint, before changing direction once again. We'll round out the physical portion of our class, the movement, with what I've been calling the biathlon, and I'll guide you through that in just a moment, and we'll do a balancing posture, and then we'll wind it down back to a resting and a breathing practice to finish it out. So if you're standing, keep your wide open position for what I've been calling the biathlon, which is an obscure Olympic discipline that involves cross-country skiing and shooting. We're going to use bow and arrows today. So you're going to, from your wide position, twist to look to the side. That's your setup. If you're on the chair, if you're not standing, that's fine. Make this into going to the side so that you have a left and a right, so that you'll switch one side and the other. So open up the legs. The feet are, one foot's pointing the short way, the other foot's comfortable. That back foot's got what it needs. And we're starting with cross-country skiing. We're starting with a walking in place or running in place, but the feet hardly move. It's the knees, it's the shoulders. You're swinging your arms a little bit. If you need to warm up, this is a great one to do dynamically to warm this body up. But if you're plenty warm, you might do it in slow motion, like those dream sequences of running across a field, maybe letting the switch of the arms be a stretch for the shoulders and the spine, and notice the decisions you're making with your hips. Are you rotating out? Are you keeping those hips forward? There's no wrong way to do this. The invitation is to feel it and to make the decision that feels best. And when you get to where you're going, you pick up a bow and arrow. Focus your gaze at an imaginary target, and you play with the back elbow there as you draw that string on the bow. You're going to have different effects depending on the position of that back arm. So that's the moving part to explore today. Where can that elbow go? And after you've done several arrows to the one side, you take it to the other side. So again, if you're standing, that's a pivot on the heels. If you're on your chair, you find a way to shift over to the other side, and we're skiing again. And that might be fast for you. That might be slow motion. Feeling, again, these decisions with the hips, with the shoulders. Noticing the moving parts, what's possible, what's available here. As you warm up the body, and then you pick up a bow and arrow, imaginary bow and arrow, eyes focused again in a single steady point. Pull that back arm. And to explore where the elbow is affecting your sensations, your experience of bow and arrow. Shoot at least one arrow, at least two. There's a good supply. And from there, we go to stillness. From there, you come back to an awareness of, oh, what have I done? What does that feel like? Where's my body responding? And what else is calling my attention? Feeling into those details. As we'll finish with a bit of a balance at this moment of direct station in Mercury. You will station your body on one leg. We are in balance with every step, just like you were doing a moment ago with the small walk. There's a moment when your body's just on one leg, right? There's a moment when we are balanced on one foot, and there's this whole math and physics that the body figures out how to stay balanced and take the step to the next foot. So we're going to keep slowing that down. You might even do that as if you're stepping into this balance. You might take that step forward because you know your body knows how to do this. That leg peels off and you freeze. You freeze with the leg lifted at a right angle. Frozen in station of this movement. And like that Mercury that arrived in the station, see if you can reverse that. And take that step backward and moving the body to the back leg, to the weight of the back leg. The front leg comes up and again suspends and stops. Holding that balance. This might be your practice. This might be your practice, a little back and forth, right leg, left leg. Seeing what decisions you're making. There's no wrong way to do this. If it feels good for you to stop in this sort of person in the wind position, you might stop there and have a moment of focus and a balance there. If you've been liking that more demanding turning out of the leg, you're welcome to find your balance and see where else the one-legged position takes you. Just taking another 2 minutes with balance. And that shift of weight from one side to the other. So many factors. Strength is a piece of them. So the stronger you are, the balance will be Easier to find, but focus, eyes in one point, unmoving. And then some good self-talk, telling yourself, I got this. And balance them steady. At least 2 rounds. The invitation is to at least be on the right leg twice and at least on the left leg the same number. There might be 3 rounds for you if it feels good. And then there's that sweetness of balance on 2 feet, arriving back at the, oh boy, so much surface area of support. Scan through your body, see what else you might need. If you're standing, you might have some other standing movements that we haven't done. You might just have a little dance party like I'm having here. You might have some other lower practices that you feel like you'd love to do, like a figure 4 for the hips, if that's your thing, or maybe some other sitting twists. Checking in with yourself, feeling into what your body's been doing and what it needs as it travels through space on this planet. And if you have a favorite thing, a thing that you're like, oh, I love twisting up my arms, or I love putting my hands together behind my back, whatever the thing is that really gets your body satisfied and happy, let's take a moment and do just that. So I'm going to work on my neck here a little bit. If that's something that you feel wasn't well addressed in this class, this might be a moment to give some more movements there. But really making this your own, making this just what you need. What does this body need on this day, in this moment? And it might need rest. It might say, plenty, that was great, let it go. We did work. Thank you for showing up and playing along. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and leave a comment about your experience. And while you're here, please subscribe to my channel and opt in for notifications to catch the next class I upload. And then head over to olgachwa.com to join in a live event or to work one-on-one with me. I'm here to help.